They're going to start, I believe they're going to start shooting that tomorrow. So I think most of the parts have all been filled, but if you still want to put in to be the lead actor in this movie, you can probably after a meeting, you can talk to Kendall. Maybe they'll drop the lead actor down to the co-actor or whatever, that kind of a deal. But anyway, the name of the movie is going to be called The Last Call for Freedom. It's about the federal government trying to take over the guns from a small Oklahoma town. Now, have we ever kind of talked about that in this particular room? And the answer, yes. So Kendall, thank you for coming. So Kendall will be up here talking about the movie and any Q&A or whatever. Has the lead role been filmed in that, Kendall?
You're still the lead role.
Thank you, Kendall. There. Now, once that's going to be, we're going to have a bald-headed cowboy. Yeah, that was one of the qualifications. You had to be bald. Now let's introduce our guest here this afternoon, Kendall Irvin. Kendall, if you come up front here and tell us about what you're fixing to do and how you're going to shoot this movie, where, whatever, the whole deal. And after we get done, the movie's called, once again, Last Call for Freedom. Thank you, Kendall, for coming to High Noon Club and going to tell us about your movie. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Kendall Irvin, and it's great to be here. I am 5 feet tall and 100 pounds, and I do like when I get to stand and you guys all sit down, because it's one of the few times people actually look up to me. So a little different there. It is great to be here, and I'm not always welcome where I go. I went to Six Flags over Texas last summer and only got to ride about half those rides, so that was a little bit. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm a little bit different, and what we do is a little bit different. I want to tell you a little bit about my life and who I am, where I come from, and how we got to be here today, and how we got to be a film company and doing this movie, Last Call for Freedom. How many of you saw me speak at the Second Amendment Association? Okay, all right, well, good. Not a whole lot. Then I appreciate that you will laugh when you're supposed to. And what I want, well, let's first of all, how many of you are from a town of 5,000 or less? How many of you grew up as a kid? Well, not that many. Okay, keep your hands up. 5,000, okay? Less than 3,000. Less than 2,000. Wow. How come y'all keep, it's growing? I don't get that. Less than 1,000. Less than 500. Oh, but where are you from?
Bromide, Oklahoma.
Bromide, Oklahoma. I've never even heard of this.
Never heard of it.
Anybody heard of Bromide? What? Okay. Where's that?
It's down by Wapanucka.
Oh, of course! I should have known that. It's a suburb of Wapanucka, right? Okay, yeah. Okay, 500 or less. Where are you from?
Wacoma, Iowa.
Oh, Wacoma, Iowa. Okay. And how many people in Wacoma?
About 275.
275. Can anybody beat 275?
No. 300.
300. Oh, where are you from?
Corn, Oklahoma.
Corn, Oklahoma.
Hey.
Didn't a guy named John Henry Dutchendorf one time live there? Can anybody tell me, Brandon, who is John Henry Dutchendorf in the back there? That's right. Let's try this just for fun one more time. How many are anybody from less than 100? Hey, and how many from?
About 70 people.
About 70 people. Wow. And I guess they didn't have a Walmart or a McDonald's, did they? And what did you guys do for fun there?
Tell us, Jimmy.
Yeah. I can't tell you. We did do bootlegging.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay. Well, that's fun.
And we shot a lot of revenuers. Their boats are still down there.
Great. Well, I'm from a small town, Walters, America, down in Walters, Oklahoma, about 20 miles south of Lawton, Fort Sill. I grew up there. I was born a small town in Texas, and we quickly moved to Walters, where I was raised. About 2,600 people, including dogs, cats, and grandmothers. And it was quite an experience for me that I wish every kid could experience. Nothing like growing up in a small town in Oklahoma. I was adopted, and my father passed away about 15 years ago, and I have come back to be an adult caregiver. How many of you are adult caregivers or have been? Okay, wow, about 70–80%. So I take care of and be careful about the wording here, or listen, I take care of my 92-year young mother. Not old, young. So she is quite the trip. I take care of her full time. And in fact, home health care should be over there about right now. So they should be right. Okay. And I have my doctor here with me today. So that's how dedicated we are. And she is quite a trip. And I love her so much. But as you know, being an adult caregiver, sometimes it can be a little interesting. And not too long ago, I started letting her, she's diabetic, I'm not supposed to give her a lot of sugar. Please don't tell Dr. Goss that. And I brought home a cherry pie not too long ago, and I let her have just little pieces of it at a time. And I came home late at night, I put it in the fridge. Next morning I get up and I look for it and I can't find it.
I didn't take notes.
No, please don't. And I couldn't find the thing, and I said, she ate it for breakfast. So I go to her and I say, Mom, you aren't supposed to eat that cherry pie all at once. You know, you're going to really, disturb your blood sugar here. And she said, I didn't eat that cherry pie for breakfast. And I said, well, Mom, nobody else has been here. Who did it? And she said, I'm telling you, I did not eat that cherry pie for breakfast this morning. And I said, so I got to think, man, I'm crazy. I'm looking all over the house. I'm looking in the fridge. I looked in the freezer. I looked on the kitchen table. I could not find that thing. And usually she doesn't lie to me, so I go back to her and I said, Mom, okay, nobody else has been here. I'm going crazy here. Are you telling me you did not eat that cherry pie this morning for breakfast? Son, I did not eat that cherry pie this morning for breakfast. I ate it in the middle of the night. Not too long ago, and by the way, these are all true stories. Not too long ago, I was cooking supper. I was there at the stove. I think it was pork chops. I'm grilling them there, frying them on in my cast iron skillet. And she comes over and she starts making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And I said, Mom, can't you tell I'm cooking? And she said, yeah, that's why I'm making me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But not too long ago, we made a milestone in our relationship. It's something that I've been agonizing over literally for years. But finally, I got her to be able to do this. I got her to let me clean out the freezer. Now, maybe you understand, some of you, what I'm talking about here. Literally, that freezer's been there for 40 years. And she said, okay, as long as I'm going to sit right beside you. And she had to look at everything, examine everything, analyze it, process it, tag it, and decide whether it could go into waste management or not. And after spending about 2.5 hours doing this whole procedure with every single thing out of that freezer, we finally get down to the last thing. And I know it's the last thing because it looked like it was hard. It looked like a moon rock, and it was glowing. I pull it out, and it's inside this bag, and I hand it to her, and she examines it, analyzes it, processes it, tags it, and then I say, okay, Mom, finally, can we throw it away? And she looks at me and she says, yeah, take it out of the bag, throw that away, but keep the Ziploc bag. That's right. The reason I tell you that story is because you have to understand about this movie, Last Call for Freedom, that we are talking about a time long ago. A time when values were different than they are today in our America. And you see, she's 92. I don't think any of you are 92. And she grew up in a different time when values were different. And that Ziploc bag meant something, didn't it? That's right. Because her generation didn't throw away things. And they didn't throw away relationships either. And my friends, this movie is about more than the Second Amendment. It's about values and keeping our traditions and keeping who we are. I'll read the tagline for you one more time. It simply is, Last Call for Freedom is, the feds try to take away the guns from a small Oklahoma town, triggering the sheriff and the veterans into a deadly confrontation with the federal government. Anybody relate to that story? So I want to talk to you for just a few minutes about this story, but also about where we are headed in America. You know, we live in a time where if you're 16 and you get pregnant, they give you a reality show. You put a sex tape on YouTube, you become a socialite. You go from, and what we just found out last week, go from being on Disney to being delusional. You don't need talent, wisdom, or a skill. You just need to have no self-respect to be famous. Things hit home to me really in a big way about a week and a half ago. Has everybody heard about the shooting in Duncan, Oklahoma? Okay. Some people want to claim it's race. Some people want to claim it's different other things. Quite frankly, it was 3 teenagers from 3 different races. So let's not think about that. Some people want to claim that, well, it's if we didn't have guns, do you really think they got those guns legal? Come on. But it hit home to me because Duncan, Oklahoma is 20 miles away from Walters, Oklahoma. And this is a microcosm of what is happening in America today. You see, our youth, for whatever reasons, and we could talk about that for a long time, I'm not going to get into that, we can afterwards if you want. But our youth today have less and less conscience, morality, and empathy.
Respect.
And respect. And that's one of the points that we are making in this movie. As we did some of the research on this, we went and interviewed some folks who had some stories. And I learned of this story. We kind of added to it a little bit, but one of the points we want to make in this movie is respect for guns and empathy for other people, to show that we folks who want to carry guns and believe in the Constitution are not these irresponsible people that have no empathy, no caring, and just will go shoot up and do whatever, but we are responsible. And I went and interviewed this lady, and she told me this story. And I'm going to tell you this story in the way it is in the movie. Our key characters are Sam, who's the sheriff, and his dad, Bud. And Bud comes to live with Sam because Bud's wife has just passed away, and he's going to sell the house. And Bud's background, the granddad, is military. He was a colonel. And he's very strict, very military, didn't spend a lot of time with his kids or with his grandkids. And there's an underlying story going on with that about liberty. So Bud comes to live with Sam for a while and his family. Sam has 3 kids. There's a middle kid, 12 years old, and Emmett is very much a boy's boy or a man's man. He's very into sports and all. And asks Bud, the granddad, to take him out shooting. He'd never been out. And so Bud says, well, I'll tell you what, I'll take you out shooting tomorrow morning. And Emmett, the 12-year-old kid, says, oh, that'll be great. I'm already an expert. I play all these games, and I can choose all these weapons and bombs, and it's just like being in war. And I can kill all these zombies, and I can kill all these people. I know lots about guns. And Bud said, well, I'll tell you what. Tomorrow, I'll take you out, and I'll show you some new things about guns. So they go out, and this scene, as a filmmaker, I'm always playing things in my head of how I want them to play out. And I didn't want there to be any dialogue except for one line. So it's the visual of Bud taking Emmett out, and they set up some tin cans, and they take the 12-gauge shotgun, and Bud starts hitting them, and then he lets Emmett take it, and he starts shooting at some of those tin cans. And then Emmett gives the 12-gauge back to his granddad, Bud, and now the POV is from the barrel, looking down. And you see him aiming at a tin can. And then all of a sudden he turns to the left, and there's this cute little furry rabbit. And Emmett sees him change targets. And Emmett's eyes get big. And like, what are you going to do, Granddad? And then he shoots the rabbit. And then he simply goes over, picks up the dead rabbit, he holds it up and shows it to Emmett. And the only dialogue in that scene is he says, dead is dead, and it's never coming back. We have got to do something in our America, something in our nation to help youth to understand empathy, to help them to understand that dead is dead and that you have consequences. Because right now, there's not 2 movies out there that are doing that. And I'm already going over my time here, so I'm gonna move along. So it is a microcosm of what's going on today. There are 4 things that we want to address in this movie, Last Call for Freedom. The first one is, of course, the Second Amendment, and that we have the right to bear arms. Okay, we definitely address that issue. The second issue that we address is that if there is another civil war, and by the way, the movie starts out with and you have the first line, by the way, so as playing himself, a doctor. But 1861 scene from the Civil War. That's how it starts out, and that's how it ends. I'm not going to go into how those connect, but they do. So the second thing that we want to look at is that if there is another civil war, I don't want there to be, but if there is, sheriffs could play a major role in how that all comes down. The third thing that we want to address, and that's why I talk about where I came from, is that small towns are the heart and soul of America. And they have connection that the big cities just don't have. And that we have values that some of the big cities do not have. Now, is Walters perfect? By absolutely no way are they perfect. Andy is not the sheriff. Barney doesn't carry 1 bullet, okay? We're not perfect. But we do have connection with each other. We have a sense of family. I was bringing my producer and my partner down, and she was being introduced to Walters, and she noticed all the churches, and she says, well, how many churches are in Walters? And the person said 17. And she says, well, how many bars are there? Zero. Now, I'm not condemning drinking, I'm just making an observation here. And by the way, on that story with the rabbit, that was a true story. A lady named Patricia told me that story, that her granddad actually did that to her. So of course that was before, you know, we had all the video, the video game, the violent video games that we have. But the fourth thing that we want to address is liberty. Is liberty. And what that really means. The liberty to be who we want, to worship God where we want, to express ourselves, to follow the Constitution, to be here at this meeting today, and yes, the right to bear arms. So those are the four things that we want to get across today. I'm going to close up here in just a second. I'm going to have two more speakers. But I want to read to you. We have not started shooting yet. We're still going to, we're in the process of trying to get some more team developed. But I want to share with you a couple of the scenes and in the dialogue. Now, in every small town, there is a place where usually the older men hang out, right? Okay. What you're saying here? Where was it at in your town?
It was one of the restaurants, of course.
All right, yeah. And what did you guys, y'all never talk politics or women or religion, right?
Don't look at me. You're talking about that old town where I came from 80 years ago.
You're not 80.
I'm 83.
Are you really?
Yes, sir.
Wow, I would have guessed you, I don't know, 38, 39. So, no, you really don't look 83. So always in those towns, there's a place where the gentlemen come and talk about the old days, talk about their wives, talk about food, talk about politics. And this is one of those scenes. In this scene, we have the Vietnam guy, we have an older man guy, we also have Bud, and we have the two ATF guys who come to town for the first time because they were actually called in by the sheriff because he thought he was doing what would be the right thing to do. Does not turn out to be a good choice. So we have our two ATF guys, and this is the first confrontation that we have where they meet Bud and the boys. So here are the guys just kind of shooting the breeze before our ATF guys enter into, which is in Walters, it's Max fried chicken, which my mother wants to have every day. So old man one says, anyone see Alex Jones on CNN last night? Well, now that guy is crazy. Old man too. He's a little out there, but he's passionate and he's genuine. I'll take him over those follow the money line politicians any day. But, well, hell, some of you voted for some of those SOBs, as I recall. Vietnam guy, not much of a choice really on either side. If we don't watch out one day, we won't have any choices left. We're going to lose our freedom. Every year, I'm telling you, the next thing they're going to try and do is take away our guns. But what do you mean? They're already working on that right now, and our senator just sold us out. Anybody try to come in here and take my Second Amendment right away might as well be starting the next Civil War. Now enters our two ATF guys as they had overheard this conversation. Richard. Well, that's a pretty strong statement. Civil War is a horrible thing. Americans fighting Americans. We have the greatest democracy in the world has ever seen. I'm proud to be a part of it. Old man one. No one said we weren't proud to be Americans. I'm just saying we lost a lot of what America was meant to be. But by a bunch of self-absorbed pricks who don't have any trouble lying right to your face or selling their own mother out. Richard, now that's sounding like you don't trust our government. Bud, oh, now that sounded like you don't trust our government, Mr. McCoy, Colonel McCoy, Marines. And I don't think we got your names. Hank Hawkins and Richard Phillips, ATF. Vietnam guy. Well, is that a fact now? Vietnam guy's a little out there, by the way. Well, we got ourselves some real G-men here. You boys have had some stellar moments lately. Must have been pretty intense when you took that toy AK-47 from the boy on Facebook. Well, how about those war on drugs? How's that one coming? Richard, well, I guess it's all about how you see things there, Colonel. Some might say you have a problem you fix right now, and the sheriff doesn't have a clue how to fix it. Maybe your town needs Big Brother before somebody really gets hurt. Old man one. I think we have a good sheriff, and he's more than capable of taking care of this community. Richard, is that so? Well, then why is this county in the top 10 of meth? A lot of that war seems to be passing through right here. Sounds like the sheriff's way over his head, or he's just incompetent. But, you know, the last time I really got upset was with somebody named Charlie. You know what happened then? Do tell there, Colonel. I shot his ass up with my M16. And I'm beginning to not like you either. Richard, I think you need to reevaluate your position there, Colonel. This hill's already taken, there's not one damn thing you can do about it. We'll do what we want, and we'll take what we want, even your guns. You remember your place in this world order. Got your attention? Now, yes, and I promise, guys, I'm summing up here. I do comedy, like my boss, who will be speaking here tonight. He said, Kendall, you know what? Some people are just born with bodies that are made for athletics and sports. You, however, your body was born for comedy. I don't know why he said that, but one of the things that we want to do in this movie is to not make it just for those in the choir. We are the choir. And to do that, to get people entertained and enthusiastic and to listen to our points, if you make them laugh, you can make them listen. So I add a lot of comedy into the movie. Because it is very, very intense. I'm going to read one last, and let me make sure I've covered everything here. We are, and the others are going to talk about this a little bit more, but we are looking for partners to finish funding this. We like about $25,000. Dell's going to talk a little bit more about that and his commitment already. We're not looking at a lot of money by people, a couple of thousand at a time. We believe that my son said, and you may know this statistic already, but who is our market? Well, 42% of all American households have a gun. People, this is a great investment because a lot of folks are going to want to see this movie. I'm going to read the last scene to you, and this last monologue by Bud. And I'll set it up for you. The feds had come in. They actually were kind of the Fast and Furious, had been in bed with the cartel and set all this up, and set up the sheriff, so that the sheriff had to say to the town, I have to take your guns, because he was set up. But he changes his mind the night before, and him, his father, and the deputy all go to the courthouse where the National Guard are and the two feds, and this is their final meeting. And by the way, one of the storylines that we talk about or bring out is the story in the relationship between Bud, the granddad, and his oldest grandson, who is not like Emmett. Elliot is artistic, and he's has more of a sensitive side. He's not the sporty guy. And at first, Bud doesn't understand that, and he doesn't like that. But through his grandson, he learns for the first time, Bud does what liberty really means. So here they are, guns are drawn on both sides. Somebody's going to get shot. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but this is Bud making his last stand to the ATF guys as guns are drawn. No, you stand down or you shoot me now, because I'm not backing down. I don't care what my son did or didn't do. This fight isn't about guns, it's about freedom. Freedom the rest of the world doesn't have. And I'm not going to stand here today and let you decide what freedom is for me. Because you see, Sergeant, I've been there long before you were born. And I watched the boys I trained give their lives without a blink of an eye, defending our freedom. I spent all my life building what I thought was liberty. But patriotism isn't just doing what your country tells you to do. It's about the right to partake in the decisions of the government and protecting the fundamental rights that were given to us by our God. And it had protected by the Constitution of the United States. And up until that point, yes, the right to bear arms and defend yourself and all the things that we hold dear. Now, this isn't the first time I've had the chance to give my life for my country. But this is the first time I will be able to give it for the right reason. So, gentlemen, either take the dump or get off the pot. And this is my son, by the way. I know I've gone too long. This is my son, and he is in charge of our internet marketing, and he's going to talk to you for about 3 minutes. Wow.
Hello, everyone. I won't lead off with stand-up material. Thanks for having us. Like I said, my name is Brandon Irvin. Doing a lot of the internet marketing for this project. I wanted to share with you some of the reasons why I'm involved. Your phone's ringing, dude. And I just wanted to let you know some of my motives for being behind this film that go beyond me being Kendall's son. This country needs this film right now, perhaps more than ever. Our country is at war with itself. This culture war will decide what direction our country will move in and what type of policies it will adopt. A lot of the general public, I feel, have no real grasp on what's occurring right now. A lot of people have checked out. They say things like, you know, that'll never happen here. You know, we're losing rights every day. There's things that are in the balance that have severe consequences. You know, can I own a gun? Can I raise a family? Can I find a job? Will a college degree be affordable? Can I eat raw milk? You know, some of these things may seem trivial. Perhaps they don't apply to you, and perhaps they don't apply to a lot of the general public, or so they think it that way anyway. But that's the problem, is that a lot of people say that. They say, you know, it's not going to happen here, it doesn't affect me, and therefore I really don't have to pay attention. But it's about being able to choose what's right for you and your family. You see, when we stop controlling our country, the government becomes the controller, and we in turn become the ruled. This is why we need this film right now. It's pointing out how precious our freedoms are, and how they're being lost, and how, you know, tomorrow a new one will be on the chopping block. Many a society has brushed off this kind of rhetoric before, and now they find themselves being the ruled. And I'm here to fight the fight the best I can. That's why I got involved in this. I don't want to see any more rights lost. I don't want to give them any more power, that's for sure. And that's what drives me into doing this. My generation and the younger people are really fired up about this. They're really liberty-minded people. The internet has allowed a lot of access to solid information as opposed to what talking heads or the media, you know, says. They can they can follow real agendas and find out, really what's behind all the rhetoric and what people do as far as policy as opposed to what they say. We're trying to do this as a grassroots effort. We don't want Hollywood involved. I doubt they would want to touch this anyway. I'm sure they would put their own spin on it that would probably make us look terrible. We have a Facebook page. If you just check out Last Call for Freedom, you can find out more information there. We've got some good conversation going on over there. It's pretty tame. Once again, kind of like the High Noon Club. It's not very aggressive. You're not gonna get into some ridiculous debate with an idiot, I hope. If you do, I will ban you. And I wanted to end with this. Remember, when the federal government doesn't want you to own guns, as it issues them by the thousands to the Mexican cartel, when that's the status quo, we're all in trouble. So that's why we need this film. Thanks, everyone. Sorry I spoke too long.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Dale, come on up. Dale is Dale Phillips here in Oklahoma City is the President and CEO of Old Surety Life Insurance. But more than that, and that's not why he's here today at all, he is one of my business partners. He has also put a lot of his own investment in this. And he is very much a patriot and a liberty-minded person. And he is a strong Christian and follower of God, and he's going to kind of talk a little bit about where we are headed as a nation in that respect. Yep.
I really don't know what I'm going to say. I'm just going to speak from the heart about some facts. We only have one time around here, and somebody once said, it's not when you get ready to die what you've done that you worry about. It's the things you haven't done. So that first time I heard that, it really struck home with me, because all of us have done things we're not proud of. All of us have done things we worry about to some degree. None of us are perfect. But sometimes we go through our lives and we pass up opportunities to do things, and we regret later that we didn't take part in something, that we didn't do what we could do. So this film needs funding. I have posted up to $50,000 for this film myself personally. And it has nothing to do with how much money I think it may make. I have the money to do it. I don't have millions to throw around, but I have the money to do it, and I'm doing it because it's a way of taking part. So you might have $1,000 or $5,000 or $25,000 that you want to take part in this movie, to be doing something that helps America see what's going on and what the end result can be. I know if you listen to talk shows like Glenn Beck and others, you probably have seen cases where they get phone calls from Germany, sometimes on the air, from people who are pretty old, but saw what went on and lived through it. And they want to tell us in America that the same thing is happening today to us. They see it happening. Also, you'll get calls from people in Australia. What happened in Australia a few years ago? They picked up all the guns. How much has the crime rate risen per year in Australia since they picked up guns to do away with crime, supposedly, which was a farce? How much has it gone up each year? Well, from the time they've been picked up, it's up over 50% now from what it was before, and it's going up still. So the crime rate rises, and why does the crime rate rise? Because there are people with guns, but they're not people having them legally. You're not going to do away with criminals. And criminals don't care, and politicians who want to control the people don't care about the criminals, because the criminals are not trying to take over the country. They just want power and control of the people, so they don't care if criminals have guns and oppress the people. Rob, rape, and steal. They don't really care about that. And people from Australia call in to talk shows and say, don't let it happen. And yet more and more people are falling for the fact that they've got to take care of their children by picking up all guns, as though that's going to protect the kids in the school. Why do you think the kids in the school have no protection? Do you think Barack Obama's children are in a school that doesn't have protection? No. All the people that are calling the shots, they have their kids in schools that have got guards, armed guards. But they want all your kids in schools that are totally vulnerable, that are gun-free zones, because that's where the people that want to raise havoc in that kind of way will go. So is that a plan? Well, maybe it is. At any rate, I can talk forever. Kendall asked me to be sure I didn't talk over 15 minutes. I'll try that real hard. But there's a main reason that we need to talk about this movie and talk about other things in the country to protect the people, and that is my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. He died to make us free. This country was founded on the Christian principles. And if you get Deuteronomy 8 out when you leave here today, you got a Bible with you, you can look at it right now, but if you get Deuteronomy 8 out, you will see that the God of heaven said, when you have the big houses, do we have the big houses? I do. When you get the cattle, well, I don't have cattle, a lot of people do. When you get the land, I don't have a lot of land, but a lot of people do. And you have all these things, and you think that you did this, and you leave me out of the picture, what did he say? What did he say in Deuteronomy 8? I will take you down, you can get it out, like every nation before you. I will take you down, this is the God of heaven. I will take you down like every nation before you. Folks, that's what's happening in America. We have kicked his son out of everything we can find way to kick him out. We have turned against his rules, his laws, his principles, and he is getting disgusted. Consequently, he is trying to wake us up. He did that with Israel many times. He is trying to wake us up, and sometimes we have to go through, people have to go through a lot of agony, a lot of torture to wake up. I pray that our country does not have to do that. That we don't have to have martial law put in place by an unconstitutional regime. And that we don't have a civil war. But I do believe there's enough fighting blood in America that if they think that insurgency is in Iraq, they ain't seen nothing yet. The insurgency in America will go on until all the culprits are dead. There'll be a lot of other people dead too, but fighting spirit Americans will go to the woods and to the hills and get you at night. You better run to another country if you're going to vote for that kind of stuff. So, I don't want that to happen, but it's getting closer and closer and closer. But we've got to keep in prayer. There's a scripture that says, when my people who are called by my name, if they will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and repent of their ways, I will hear their prayer and I will heal the land. And if we won't do that, we're not going to be healed by God. We've got to stay in prayer greatly. I believe one reason that the country is still as free as it is, and the only reason it's still as free as it is the praying Christians in America that God doesn't want to have to go through what they will go through. But there are limits. And a lot of those praying Christians for decades have voted people into office that are not respectable people. They are people that only care about themselves and power and control. And they lie to you. They lie to you. And people, we need to wake up. And we need to pray that God will give us enough time to vote enough people out and to get people in office who care about the Constitution and care about God for us to make it. And it can happen. We serve a God that's very powerful if we trust Him and pray appropriately and do what He says. You know, there's a place in the Scriptures in the Old Testament where Israel was in a battle. And Moses was on a hill, and God said, as long as your arm is in the air, you will win this war, this battle. Well, his arm got tired. You remember that story? And as his arm came down, more Israelites started dying. And so he held his arm up with his other hand. And they started winning again. He eventually had other men hold his arm up so they could win. You tell me we serve a God that's so in control that people are living or dying because your arm is in the air or not, and you think He doesn't have total control? He has total control if you are obedient. It doesn't mean you're perfect. Jesus died because none of us are. But He wants you to trust Him, to love Him, to depend on Him. Do not give yourself over to a power that owns you so that you have a mark, so that you are not owned by God anymore, but you've given yourself to a government that is trying to take His place. That's what He doesn't want. Do not let that happen. Trust God and pray.
Amen.
Kendall, appreciate you coming out here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having us.
Here's another very interesting thing that I would like to just kind of tell you. It's kind of really makes you think about different kind of things that goes in the country, the power of prayer, different relationships, and whatever goes on. It was either yesterday or the day before. I had a meeting with somebody, and I can't remember. I'm trying to recollect who that actually was, but they actually asked me, do you know Dell Phillips? And I said, I don't think I know. No. Right? So they're talking about you. I said, I don't think I know. No, I know him. They said, well, yeah, I think you probably do, or whatever. Well, yeah, I know. Have we ever met before? Maybe we have. I don't know if we have or not. But anyway, glad you come out here today. Appreciate having you out here today. Because you're actually in this room, you're talking our music, okay? Because what and Kendall, the movie you're doing, you're talking our music because we've had actually discussions about this kind of format actually happening in America. And one of the people that I just talked, well, I didn't talk to you through email, I talked back and forth this last week with, is a guy by the name of Brad Rogers, Sheriff Rogers. We mentioned him in this room too before. He's a sheriff from Indiana, the state of Indiana. And he did the kickback with the federal government. The same way that Sheriff Mack did in Arizona. They have a constitution, our Supreme Court has now made this ruling that the sheriff is the most powerful law enforcement agent in a county, the county sheriff. He is the main person. So again, you're touching our heart with the movie. And this is what I believe is a movie that the rest of the nation needs to know. Because collectively, we don't know all this stuff that happens around the United States. But through movies, social media, whatever, and networking, this is how we learn about really what are our constitutional rights and what are the objectives of our sheriffs and how they're going to protect us. The sheriff is just not out there to rescue. They're out there to protect, they should be, to protect your constitutional rights. So again, thanks very much for coming and speaking your part in this today. And Kendall, thank you very much for coming out here and telling us what your movie's gonna be about. Now we'll start with a question and answer, and I apologize for taking up way too much time to that. But you did inspire me because we were just talking about you yesterday or the day before. Question. First names only.
Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Kendall, I have a suggestion. Back at the scene at the fried chicken area where the guys are talking to the ATF queue, and he mentions the fact that this is the greatest democracy on earth, maybe Mac or Bud should remind them it's a republic.
That is a great line. I'll tell you what, I'm going to put that in. By the way, I am the writer. I'm going to put that in, and I'll tell you what, I'll give you a credit on that.
Constitutional republic.
There you go. That's great.
See, another thing, this comes back to the analysis of California, but really doesn't
I'm California.
Me too, okay, we actually do know what we're talking about. Okay, next question. Okay, let's go right here now. And then we'll go this way. I'm gonna kind of dance around here. You like to dance?
I'm Canadian. They took away our guns many years ago. We're owned and controlled by the bankers. I love this country. I think that this is the last bastion of freedom in the world. And I can say from first-hand experience that you have no idea the powers that be and what they can do when they don't want you to do certain things. And I just wanted to say I've been studying this stuff for a long, long time. I first, in 1982, became aware of the plan for the one-world government. Didn't want to believe it. And the person who told me about it was an Irishman. And he said, you know, we're all fighting over a colored piece of material at the end of a 6-foot flat pole. The people in control don't care about your flag. This is an economic pie. And there's two things. I had to make a note because I used to get nervous. There is good news on the horizon, but just in case, if you haven't heard of how people are being manipulated, please Google and look up and study mind control. MK Ultra was a government-sponsored mind control. There's lots of information about that. The other thing is, don't believe what you see in the media. And I know this movie. And another thing that's very, very difficult to even talk about, and I don't want to be thought of as a total loony here, but Google Boston bombing hoax, and you will see, and also Google crisis actors, because there's people out there that are doing this specifically to get the media. And Spielberg was actually at the Boston bombing thing, and the fellow in the wheelchair with that leg out, if he had really had that blown off, he'd have been out. But anyway, there's some really good young people that are taking the film frame by frame by frame, and it absolutely blows your mind when you see what really happened. The other thing to Google is DARPA, D-A-R-P-A. And the connection with DARPA, that's a very large organization that has some connection to the Sandy Hook thing, which I won't get into. But the other thing is there's good news. There's a young man named Benjamin Fulford. He's a Canadian, and his father was the ambassador to Cuba when he was growing up. So he lived all over the world. And he had a first-hand experience meeting people in third world countries, and he developed a great empathy. And his great-grandfather was one of the wealthiest people in Canada. He started, if anyone's heard of dog's kidney pills, anyone here heard of dog's kidney pills? I see a head shaking. Anybody from English background? He developed a worldwide pharmaceutical company, became extremely wealthy, was the largest shareholder of General Electric and General Motors, and he was killed in 1905. But in any case, this young man has now he's in the middle of what's happening between, I call the good guys and the bad guys. And the good guys are winning with God's help. And God is actually directing it. But the interesting thing is, it's involving Asians, and it's involving some very, very high-level people from the Pentagon. And if you Google Benjamin Fulford with an L.net, and I just encourage you to read a little bit, and it's really good news. So, and thank you so much for all of you, and I just pray for America and pray for Canada.
Thank you. Now, I want a quick response to that. We actually address this issue in the movie because there's a conversation with the ATF, and they're saying, guys, we got to do something about sheriffs before they realize about this situation, because they're getting too much power. We got to get the media on our side. So what sheriff can we set up? So that there is a scene, and that's part of the movie.
You know, another thing, in this room, I believe it's like September, the last Friday of September, Molly, help me out here with it. Trevor Loudon is going to come into this room, okay? And he's got his new book out. When is it?
27th.
Oh, okay, September 27th, it'll be in this room. I don't know if you know Trevor Loudon. He's a man from New Zealand, and he's on Glenn Beck and some of the other kind of shows like that, but he's got his new book out, and there's one thing that we need to really learn from other countries, that these societies like Canada and New Zealand or whatever, when America fails, the world's going to fail. So that's why we are the last hope for the world. I mean, these freedoms. So let's always keep that in mind. And thanks for talking about Canada, because again, Canada's given up some of their rights. I mean, they're one of our closest allies, but they've given up these rights. So we don't want to do this. Okay? So let's learn from them. Thank you.
Thank you. Kendall, you say you have a body for comedy. I want you to know, brother, you have great hair.
I do have thick hair.
I have great hair. My question is, the late Francis Schaeffer wrote a lot about art and film and literature. And one of the things that he stressed to the Christian community is that when you see a piece of literature or a film, that you walk away saying that you had experienced art over good propaganda. And I know your film has a strong message. So my question is, when people walk away from your film, are they going to say, I just saw or experienced good propaganda, or did I witness a thing of art? And have you kept that in mind, that blend? Because the message needs to be subtle, according to Schaeffer.
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. And I did talk a little bit about, again, my background is comedy. I do a lot of comedy songs with my guitar, and I do a lot of political commentary with my songs. That is funny. My thesis in what I do with comedy is to take serious issues and make them funny, so that people will be able to see them in a way that they haven't been able to before. So, with that said, yes, we don't want to come off as propaganda. We don't want to come across as anti-American. We want to be entertaining, so that even those on the total opposite side at the end of the movie will say, you know what? I kind of like that. That was funny and inspiring, and I may rethink my position. So yes, very much art.
Next question.
Bob invited the FBI to speak to us one time, and I asked him the question, do you realize that the county sheriff in his jurisdiction is the highest law enforcement officer in America? And he said no. And then he turned to one of his associates and said, politicals.
Okay.
I can tell you a story.
No, we don't want to. So we just got a few minutes. We got some questions. Okay. Question.
Well, I just wanted to point out a couple of things here. The lady from Canada was talking about the Mordor government. If you haven't done it, please go Google Agenda 21. It's real. Okay. The other thing is, the gentleman over here is going to have a rally about Syria. One of the things I want to point out about this is somebody else's civil war. We have no business being in that. I'm a Vietnam era veteran, and we set that precedent in Vietnam. Vietnam was really a civil war. So now if we stick our nose into Syria and Libya and everybody else's civil war, we're going to have, God forbid we have one here, we're going to have Russian and foreign troops here in America. That's the precedent, that's the danger, and I hope you would address that at your rally.
Okay, how many people do not realize that when you just mentioned Agenda 21, that's part of the Republican Now platform, national platform?
Against it.
No, that is part of the Republican National Platform, Agenda 21. Okay, did you know that? Who did not know that?
Platform is against and against.
Oh, excuse me, I'm saying it just backwards, okay? Part of the Republican platform is against Agenda 21. Excuse me, we do not support Agenda 21, the Republican platform.
My name is Woody. I want to thank you all for coming. I'd like to comment on something Dell said, kind of back him up a little bit here, about following God and reading the Bible and understanding everything that goes on with it. The reason why it works and why we are protected is because God made us that way. Yes, thank you.
Okay, next question. Read back here. Okay, we go to the front.
My name is Ken, and I was wondering, do you have any pro forma financial statements? Do you have anything that you could present for somebody that might be interested in investing in this project?
Yes, we do. Thank you for bringing that up. I do have our business summary that I can email you. If you do not have email, I will find a way to get it to you. I can physically mail it to you. I have cards. You can see me, my son, or Dale afterwards, any of us three, for all that information. Again, we're not looking for $100,000. We need about 25 to fully fund this thing. And if we do it, you know, $1,000, $2,000 at a pop, that's what we'll do. So, thank you so much.
Kendall, thank you. Kendall Irvin, thank you very much for coming to High Noon Club and telling about the last call with free. Thank you. Okay, so again, have a great holiday weekend, Memorial Day weekend. Thanks everyone for coming to High Noon Club.